Buenos días.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hola, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Welcome.
Good morning, Winnie. Excuse me. I don't know what happened with my programs. I was looking new form. I can't understand. Okay. Now.
We are happy that you're here now.
Yeah, thank you. Now it's okay. I will see la imagen. That is okay?
Yeah, so we can start then. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We'll start with a word of invocation before we can invite our guests today. And so I'm going to call upon Richa. Richa, please go ahead with the invocation. Thank you.
I will first start with my native language and then I will translate it into English. So I will start now. Thauji Pakasya ji hane thapi tapa aja aji wa chawa dhagati thapit lamuka ji sa fimi pakenyaka waya chwanagu jaya kha aja balaka wa puka wanka yathe fema dhaka आशीर्वाद फोने निहा था जिसु जिया पला न्याधिक थकवे ख सयका सिका सुइका कथा वया च्वानगु छु झी सकल सफल जुएथा फयमा सिसा थ्वे थेका गस सकल नस्या नयका आले छि सकल आदिवासी पिनागु हक सुनिश्चित जुमा धका दुनु गलिनिसे मन तुने सुभाए जयमा Matha. So I will now translate into English. Today, I would like to call upon our ancestors and deities that we follow to bless us with courage and success on this journey that we have initiated through FIMI. Each day, we are learning so many things and empowering ourselves to take our movement forward. May we all be successful and our voices be heard. Let's pray that the rights of Indigenous people will be ensured. Thank you. Thank you, Winnie.
Thank you so much, Richa, for your invocation today. And just before I invite our very special guest today, I'm going to share with all of us a very short bio of her so that you can know a little bit about her before she can join us. And so Doña Tarsila Rivera Zia is one of the most recognized Indigenous activists in Peru and the world. For more than 40 years, she has been defending Indigenous rights through her organization, Chirapac, and her involvement in other networks and institutions focusing on Indigenous women, children, and youth. She has received awards from UNICEF, World Foundation, Sacred Fire Foundation, the Ministry of Culture of Peru for her distinguished trajectory and valued contributions to the promotion and defense of Indigenous cultures and rights. She has served as a member of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues from 2017 to 2019. Currently, she's the Continental Coordinator of the Continental Network of Indigenous Women of the Americas, ECMIA. She's also a founding member, Mrs. Rivera Zia is also a founder of the International Indigenous Women's Forum. These two networks foster leadership and political participation for millions of Indigenous women across the globe. She's the founder and president of Chirapac, the Center for Indigenous Cultures of Peru, an association that promotes the affirmation of cultural identity and capacity building for women and young Indigenous leaders, many of whom now serve in public offices in their communities and local governments. So it's my pleasure to invite Doña Tarsila, who's also president of FIMI and has been an ally to the school for a very long time. And so welcome, Doña Tarsila, and please feel free to do the session as you please, and let us know if you need any assistance or any assistance from us.
Thank you very much, Sister Winnie. First of all, I want to share with you that this will be a conversation That's my style. It's not a conference, it's not a speech. And I want to know how long time would we listen me, and after to share the questions or and answers. How long time we have for all the
So for the entire session, we have about an hour and a half.
yeah.
And then we can have you can speak for an hour and a half or an hour, and we can have a conversation for another hour. So altogether, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah. I think we can divide the first hour and after the second hour or half an hour after, okay?
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, that's one. The other one is to decide. I will speak in Spanish. ¿Pongo el canal en español o pongo...
Do I need to put the channel in Spanish or do I just speak in Spanish?
Queridas intérpretes?
We have to go to the Spanish channel in case someone asks a question in English.
Ok, español. Ya, entonces... ya.
Okay.
Muy buenos días, queridas intérpretes.
Good morning, dear interpreters. I have now on the Spanish channel and I'll continue to speak on the Spanish channel. Is that okay?
¿Me escucha?
Can you hear me?
No le escucho, intérprete.
Escuchamos, tranquila. Puede
Ya,
continuar.
perfecto. Entonces, bien.
Okay, then.
Estamos bien. Ay, en primer lugar,
So first of all,
quisiera con ustedes también hacer una invocación
I would also like to do an invocation, a prayer for so many older sisters who are going through physical ailments, but you know that physical ailments also affect us spiritually and emotionally. This weekend, we received the news of one of our sisters from Venezuela. She has been receiving treatment, and it seems that she is getting worse. So we have been sending up special prayers for her starting last night, trying to accompany her in her suffering. So I want to have just a moment of invocation, prayer for the sisters who in one way or the other are suffering physical, emotional, or spiritual pain, and who often need our accompaniment. Even if we don't know them, even if we are not near, even if we don't know their faces, because each of you knows that the sisters who are dedicating ourselves to the fight for rights often neglect our own emotional, spiritual, and physical health. So just a few seconds, please, of silence.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Con esto, queridas,
With this, dear ones, we will begin.
nuestro proceso.
And we're going to talk about our process. First of all, I'd like to congratulate each one of you for your interest in this program, for your willingness, availability of time, because we know that everything that you will learn here and everything that you will assume for yourself as information will help to improve our actions and our work around the world. Also want to congratulate and thank the FEMI staff who have planned and carried out these activities with so much affection throughout the year, and in fact now for many years. Thank you, Winnie. Thank you also to the interpreters who are always making the effort to understand us and to be the bridge, the appropriate bridge between you and people who are sharing information and experience and knowledge with you. I have seen in the information about you that all of you are professional women with excellent academic training, and that each one of you is going through some kind of organization with your Indigenous communities, developing and carrying out responsibilities of all kinds. So I'm very happy to have been invited here. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I did not have a chance to prepare a PowerPoint, but you're teaching me that I need to organize the information I have in a better way. It'll get better. I especially want to congratulate the participation of the sister from the Indigenous community of Egypt and who's working with the oldest culture of the world, which is the Bedouin community. Welcome to you. Welcome to all of you. And thank you for giving me this time. So for you, this is perhaps the first time that you are seeing me or listening to me. Also, for many of us, when we think about beginning the path of the struggle for the recognition of the rights of Indigenous peoples and of Indigenous women and youth and children, which this had been a struggle of many years, and it's been a very long struggle. And so we'll talk about the last stage, starting with my generation and the reference of the world conferences promoted by the United Nations. So why are we just talking about this United Nations scene? And the response is that this is the space where from all over the world we came together. And it's also the place where the governments who make all the decisions in our country arrive. It's also a scenario where we have the possibility of globalizing ourselves in the good sense of the word as Indigenous peoples and to globalize our struggles. While our ancestors and our elders began in 1927 when they first came to the United Nations, demanding the most basic thing, which is the right to be recognized in Indigenous peoples. We have now traveled many more miles with more actions in the 60s and the 80s. Here in the 1980s in the Americas, the movement of the Indigenous peoples was strong and representative and very significant for those of us who live in countries where colonization and invasion has left a huge mark, because the invasion of Europeans and colonization has not only taken away our right to be recognized as Indigenous peoples, but it has denied us that right to be recognized with full rights. And so we must think about the inclusion of the rights of all diversities after a long struggle for liberation. In these are struggles in states that are supposed to be democratic. They are republics, and they are supposed to be a democratic system. And so we participate in the election of authorities, and we have the right to exercise political power along with everyone else. But all of this is still an ideal, hope, a dream in many countries, as you well know. In terms of the movement of Indigenous peoples, I don't know if you recall that there was an actor named Marlon Brando who recognized that he was of Indigenous origin. And so he, in some way, sponsored the movement of Indigenous peoples at the global level. And at that time, there was the American Indian movement here in the United States, which was an inspiration for those of us who lived in the rest of the Americas. And I want to share with you that in the 1980s, there was a political movement made up of Indigenous leaders, men and women, very representative, very strong, organized by regions. We had North America, very strong leaders from the United States and from Canada. And I remember an Indigenous woman from that time, Phyllis Jam. She's still around. She was one of the women participating in the American Indian movement. She was very strong, very clear person. And I met her in Nairobi in 1985, where some Indigenous women from Canada, United States, and other regions had arrived. And there was a Mixteca Indigenous woman from Mexico who was in that session where the Nobel Prize winner, Rigoberta Menchú, was present. And she was very young. All of us were very young at the time, fewer wrinkles and gray hairs, and we weighed a little bit less. And we all came together in these spaces, and we started to communicate through smiles, through hugs, through questioning each other where we were from, because we all were divided by this language barrier. So I remember quite a bit that the Sami sisters from the Arctic area were present, and there were also sisters from Canada and the US. And one of them, who appears in the photo, is the sister Wayawanashu. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. She was from an organization from the US movement, and she went to Colombia on an exchange visit with recognizing the indigenous peoples of Colombia. And unfortunately, she was murdered in Colombia during a time that was very difficult. At that time, also, it was believed that peace was possible. And so there were many missions to conflictive areas to do advocacy and exchanges to see how we might find strategies for building peace. So this phase of our movement was very inspiring, and it seemed to me that we might include a search for information about the process, because I'm talking about the last 40 years, let's say, of the movement as a witness to the movement in my life. But we need to be very clear that Indigenous women and sisters from all of the periods of time have participated according to their context and according to what was happening in their countries. And they have committed themselves to the struggle for independence against colonialism, against invasion. And this process has been very strong. I was mentioning 1985 because that's the conference where Indigenous women met each other and recognized each other as Indigenous women. The first was in 1975. That was the first World Conference on Women that was carried out in Mexico. And there was just one sister, but that sister didn't go to the conference as part of the Indigenous woman, but as an Indigenous woman who was part of Bolivia's movement against exploitation in the mining industries. She was Bolivian, and in that conference of 1975 in Mexico, she participated together with women and feminists who were fighting for rights to demand gender justice. And so that's where we began to understand that we had our own struggle as Indigenous women from colonized countries. And we've found this world of more intellectual social movement groups who didn't necessarily include in their proposals anything related to Indigenous women. And so that's where we started through various participations to be listened to and heard little by little.
So there are certain moments in time, such as this first one for me, that are so important. And then from this region, we came to participate actively in what we call the counter celebration of the 500 years of what was called the discovery of the Americas or civilization. But for us, for Indigenous peoples of the Americas, it really was a moment and a reason to articulate and to express what was happening with us. This moment of the discovery of the Americas is when we opened up our eyes and we started to look beyond the small spaces, the spaces of our countries and our regions. So we united to the counter celebration of those 500 years that we call 500 years of invasion, of negating our rights, of invading our territories, of dispossession and plundering. So, and also 500 years of submission. So with this point, I would like for each one of you to find out how this was in your regions in Africa and Asia and the Pacific. How and at what time and in what historical context colonizations arrived, invasions arrived,
nosotros de esta región
and how it happened that we from these regions can also find out how this happened. Up until today, we're living in our own skin, our own flesh, the consequence of colonialism, invasion, negation of our rights. When we talk about racism, that is how racism, which is a consequence of invasions and imposition of a way of thinking, a way of acting on others, just because they considered them different, it has really caused the negation of rights and is taking us to a situation of inaction, because it depends on the context and our cultures. That is how we have suffered the effects of colonization in our territories.
También en nuestras propias vidas,
in our peoples and our own lives as girls, as women. And to this we add the political colonization, the political invasion and power hegemony, together with religion, and how Western religion that comes from a different place is imposed to serve the power to not only in political ways, but also religious and spiritual ways. So with all of this, we get to 1992, when we kind of, or it was a moment of liberation from the chains and to start speaking up that we are peoples, that we're not minorities and ethnic groups. We're peoples with territories, with cultures, with languages, ways of thinking, territories, natural resources. Which we're all nowadays prioritizing in our agendas because they're disappearing. 92 was the stage for counter celebrations to articulate ourselves, and a lot of women met through that process, and also through the Indigenous movement, where some of us participate actively since 1980. I'm talking about this region. And to close this part, before we go to the specific spaces where we have participated, I'd like to mention also that, and for all of you, the majority speak English, if you could please find the World Council on Indigenous Peoples. This council in the 80s, up until almost 88, something like that, 1988. It was like us, Indigenous women, articulated or structured by regions. That is, we have the regions of Africa, Asia, Pacific, North. It was called Latin America and the Caribbean then. That World Council, structured at this global level and made up by female and male leaderships, feminine or female, not that visible then, but brilliant women. They all participated in the processes for the recognition of indigenous peoples in Geneva, what we call the Human Rights Committee. But it had the space there, and it started with the Working Group on Indigenous Peoples, which then later on formed the working group for drafting the Declaration on Indigenous Peoples, and that took 23 years. So a lot of Indigenous women participated in that space. We wrote our proposals, contributing to the declaration, and we felt part of that declaration because we contributed to it. We gave our time, our initiatives, and everything else. So the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is part of all of us, and you should feel included as well. Not only men participated in that process. And at this point, I also would like you to take on the task of researching a little bit
¿Y qué mujeres indígenas
in
participamos?
DOSIP, how many women and what indigenous women participated in that process, in the process of drafting the declaration,
En el proceso de lucha de reconocimiento de
and in the process of fighting for the recognition of our rights. I think that DOSIP has a very nicely organized archive, and most of you are professionals. I'm sure you will not find it difficult to find this information. And as a contribution, maybe you can contribute who to the group and share with the group after you research who from your regions participated in that process. Now, to go specifically into our participation and the process, since I was asked to speak about Beijing, process of Beijing and Beijing plus 20 and everything related to the phase post-Beijing. And since I see that some of you are also related to the subjects that have to do with sexual and reproductive rights, it's a topic of interest and work for some of you. I would like then to talk also during this session to talk about the milestone which was the Declaration on Development and which during that year when this was made, there was a process where us as Indigenous women were able to participate in that process. Perhaps it was not completely planned because, as you know, we lacked and still lack a lot of information. And
todas nosotras nos dedicamos a la generación.
We also lack resources because we are dedicated to acquiring income to sustain the family or to study. But the Indigenous women's movement doesn't start with projects, it doesn't start with salaries, and we have not received salaries. So just like leaderships that develop in communities, a natural expression of uniting and raising our voices to fight against injustices is what took place. So likewise, when in 1994, the process to participate at the Conference of Population and Development in Cairo, Egypt, was developing, and I see there's a sister from Egypt. I would like her perhaps to research how that Conference on Population and Development was and whether there was visible Indigenous participation.
Les voy a comentar que llegué demasiado anecdóticamente.
I can tell you that I arrived at that conference on population and development in a way that was not really planned. There was an meeting in Rio de Janeiro for feminist women 2 months before the conference in Cairo. And Chiapas, that's my mother organization, received an invitation in English asking for a representative to someone who had statistic skills and someone who would have information and everything else to participate at that preparatory meeting in Rio. And since none of us considered themselves to have those skills, we wrote back saying, no, we don't have any, but we have the president from Chiapas who is really interested. And we sent a note saying that we would like to be included in terms of everything related to health, sexual and reproductive rights of indigenous women, because they are going through all these problems, and there were communication issues because of language barriers. So they just sent us an invitation. So I personally went to Rio, and I can tell you that that's when I met for the first time feminist women from my own country and from other countries of Latin America, but also from the North and many from Europe. And indigenous women, we were a Cherokee sister whose last name is Acetoyer. She's still working on health issues. I haven't seen her since then, but we have re-encounter, and we have met again because of Facebook. Sharon Acetoyek, Cherokee, that was the first one. The second one was a Chicana sister from the United States and a Maya sister from Guatemala.
Nombre. Yo.
I would have to find her name. Then myself, and sometimes Elian Poriwara from Brazil.
Esa reunión que se discutía mucho.
At that meeting, there was a lot of talk, mainly about the need to protect ourselves against the transmission of illnesses. What are they called? Sexually transmitted diseases. I went back to Lima, let me tell you, with like a condom as a hat. You couldn't do anything whatsoever without a condom. That was everything in terms of cancer. It just protected you from everything. That was my take from the conference. I love my sisters from that meeting. Sharon Acetoyer, especially, with whom I was able to create this strategic alliance. She's from the North. She had an image and a presence that was not like my presence and my sister, my Maya sister. We were both quite little, quite petite. And I asked if they were able to sign a document that I wanted to include, focusing on health and reproductive health, sexual and reproductive health for women. So everybody's talking about taking care of themselves, but no one's really looking to see what's happening to us. Sharon said, write it in Spanish, And our Chicana sister translated it, then we discussed it, and she was the one who really was the door so that that preparatory meeting could hear for the first time our statement, and that was in 1994 in Rio. It was fabulous because imagine if the three of us from Latin America,
Activistas de derechos sexuales reproductivos,
the majority of sexual and reproductive rights activists were also from this region and quite active. And when we asked to speak and to have 2 minutes to read our document at the plenary, the region didn't give us the space. They just said, there's not enough time, the other person is going to read, that's too specific, etc. But when I told Sharon, my region is not giving me space to read. So you can see if you can read it yourself, since it's in English. No, she said. I am going to make sure that my region gives you the space. So we needed that strength, that confidence. She spoke with her region, and they gave us the space. I spoke in Spanish, reading my document, and the person at the table, I remember really well, two leaderships I remember from that time. One woman from the United States, Adrienne Germain was her name. Later on, I saw her in New York. And the other one from this region, also from Brazil, was Miss Pitanwit, who luckily is still alive. Those leaders at the table said, read slowly because we need clear interpretation, for example. But my own region denied me the right to read. Can you imagine? At that time, we were not talking about discrimination or racism. We were not aware of ourselves being objects of discrimination, subjects of discrimination. People who fight now for rights and justice, who also have a little bit of racism, need to do reflection and self-reflection. 94 then again was another milestone, as I said. After this preparatory meeting in Rio, we went to Cairo. Some of us, I don't remember how many, dear sisters, but Sharon took me to Cairo, and I was with my name tag in English, and people would talk to me in English, and I would say, no, I don't speak English. And people would say, but this says that you're from the United States. So I was walking around accredited by Sharon's organization, which is in the United States. But in Cairo, dear young sisters, the action plan, the Cairo action plan mentions and includes Indigenous women. But in that process, the main thing we asked for was the right to information. There must be plans and programs to inform us before thinking about family planning. And at that time, you also should know that the indigenous movement itself was not in agreement with limiting family growth. We had a lot of problems in Peru with male leaders because they said that obligating ourselves to limit family growth was a way of exterminating ourselves. It was like a plan to exterminate us, to take our land, especially in the Amazon, because there's not a lot of population there and large areas of land. So it even sounded reasonable then, what they were saying, but then we started looking at what was happening to young women and their health, especially the issues related to human rights pertaining to women and girls. If connected to sexual and reproductive rights in our regions, in our peoples, and our cultures. So I kind of leave that question for you to research in terms of what was our participation in Cairo. And you should take a little bit of time to read about what was left, what happened with the Cairo Action Plan in terms of Indigenous women, and how were the processes after that, Cairo +5, +10, 20, and 25? Because we have participated at least from this region, and it's always been in our agenda. Now, let's talk about Beijing. Beijing, for us, doesn't start in 95. The Americas region started a process in 1993, actually, to unite processes from north to south and south to north. So from Canada to all the way to the south, Indigenous women leaders from Canada decided that we needed to unite, and that is also why it's important to recover our history, because we need to understand the contributions from women who gave their lives dreaming about full rights for all of us. So in 93, we started a process by region and sub-regions, and in 95, we started with meetings up until Beijing, and the historical event
Siempre pongo de ejemplo, la carpa
where we had the Indigenous women tents led by our sister Libitaudi, which was the place for all of us to gather more than 100 Indigenous women from different experiences, different academic training, and different expectations too. We all gathered there under that tent. I don't remember now how so many from this region, the Americas, got there. But I also want to add that that process, at least for the continental link of women from the Americas, that was a very important process as a preparatory event, but also because it brought us together. It was our first continental gathering, since our first continental gathering in Quito, where a sister, politically very strong, and that was Blanca Chancoso. She was the first Indigenous consultant hired by the Population and Development Fund in Ecuador. When she was in that position, she also had to play an important role so that the Population Fund could support Indigenous women's processes. So we also have to think that just having access to a small, medium, or large power place or organization, you need to be able to use it in an effective way. And in the case of Blanca, she was able to advocate to get funds for our first gathering, to prepare all the documents for Beijing, according to the topics that we needed to contribute to, and also how the diversity of Indigenous women from the Americas could how we all got together. Some were very young, others not so much, but we wrote a proposal in terms of all the issues discussed in Beijing. Blanca, by strategy, which we didn't understand very well, went in the official delegation, and we were in Guaido. We didn't understand that there was an official meeting where certain topics were being discussed. We didn't know that. We only knew how to relate to our sisters, participate at the tent, discuss different topics, prepare our declaration. For that, yes, we have a first declaration, the Declaration of Quito, and then the proposals that we brought to the wider meeting in Beijing, but on the part of civil society. We got to that tent trying to share with our sisters what we had proposed and written from the Indigenous women of the Americas. We had to write in English, and we were all pushing each other. Who's going to write in English? Who's going to write in English? Nobody wanted to do, but chewing on it over and over, listening and repeating, we proposed what we had written. I can tell you that sisters from other parts of the world were inspired by the work that we had done and our effort. And as a result, we got that first declaration of Indigenous women in Beijing. And I had my discussions with Blanca and others, because Blanca would say, go ahead, write. And I would say, dictate it to me. You're the politician. And she would say, no, you know how to do it. So, sisters, fundamentalism, sectarianism is not conducive to unity. On the one hand, there were sisters who wanted us to sign that document and wanted that only those from organizations that are now called like community organizations or representing organizations. There are sisters who only want those representatives to sign. But then there were other sisters who were not necessarily in the communities, but were doing work and they were there. So I felt pressure from both sides. Someone said, you need to add me, you need to put me in. And other was saying, no, let's not. So I told Blanca, you're the politician, would you decide? Should we put down the 20 from the communities as representatives, or should we instead put 100 women, Indigenous women from other parts of the world? Some were academics from other parts of the world, the North, other parts of the world, not just from the communities. So what is best politically speaking?
So that was the question. Should we be 20 or should we be 100? So we won. It has to be 100. So there, sisters, when you start reading that first document, it's totally representative even today. It's really something that has not passed from relevance at all. And today we can see clearly that collective rights of Indigenous women are very important. And it began with the recognition that we belong to Indigenous peoples and we are Indigenous women. So all of the aspects are included. This conference was very important because after we realized that there were some sisters like Sister Otilia who had been in the government delegation inside. I think at that time she was the minister of something, but we weren't seeing her in our space. But she had been in Beijing also. Then Blanca would come and go. And we asked our sister Rigoberta Menchú to help us to make sure that the declaration and the documents had value, because this long document was written with everyone's contribution, and we had to do advocacy with each of us so that each of us felt okay about signing it. So we had to do a lot of work. And we asked Sister Rigoberta, who was there, to help us with her position of having won the Nobel Prize. This was very interesting. It was a big accomplishment. There's a Beijing Plus 25 document that writes about part of that process. And we can send you that information. Right now, I don't have the technical support to do so, but so that you can have the consultation documents on this process. It's almost 8:05, and I'm just getting into the Cairo and Beijing processes. But I think the next process is something you already know more about. In Beijing Plus 5, that became the scenario where, for the first time, Indigenous women arrived to New York and we gave birth to FEME. And you already know what FEME does. The important thing here is to understand how the efforts of working together and networking and working on processes gives us and has given us results over time. And that if you have a movement or a result of any kind, it's never the result of just one person. You may have some women who took the initiative, and you as leaders know that you take initiative, that you share, you network, you add things to what you're doing, and you build as you go. But the life and the actions and the process of FEME goes beyond this. It goes beyond any particular region or any particular language or even status. Because also in the Indigenous women's movements, there's certain issues of status. But beyond this, what has been the most important is that Indigenous women have gotten together and we've had our own initiatives, and that these initiatives have been taken up by others. To get to Beijing Plus 5 in New York in the year 2000, we invited ourselves and invited some leaders that we have met throughout the process. And we got together in a workshop of Indigenous women in the new century or in the new millennium. And we had that meeting in Lima. And our concern was, how are the Indigenous women going to arrive at the new millennium? This is a whole new challenge. This is a benchmark. So in this workshop, Indigenous Women Before the Next Millennium, we had women from Asia, from Africa. Berenicia Seek was there, his sister, streaming with us. We had Leah Mackenzie from Canada. We had sisters from Morocco, I believe, and Lucy Mulenke, who's now the vice president of FEME. And we designed what the primary programs are that exist now to respond to the main problems that Indigenous people have, but we thought about it as an international thing, not just by regions. So what we did was to add together our initiatives and ideas, and we analyzed and talked about our problems and processes, but from various contexts. And I have always been someone who talks a lot and speaks up. And since I already knew the Indigenous movement and I knew about the Assembly of First Nations from before the 1980s, Leah Mackenzie, who was part of the Assembly of First Nations of Canada, well, we asked her to get us some funds because Canada could give something. And so she advocated with the men who were handling the funds at that point, and she was successful. And we were able to bring about 100 Indigenous women to New York for the first time. It was really great because when we got to New York, it was a horrible winter full of snow and freezing wind. You can imagine women from Panama from that space, in that space. But we arrived lifting our voices, and there were organizations who gave us hats and coats and snow boots because it really was a tough winter. And the next thing I want to put out there as an example has to do with this. In this meeting, we already knew that some people were going to be able to get into the formal meetings and others of us were going to be working outside. Well, outside, we were informing ourselves, networking, working on paragraphs of recommendations. And in that conference, what I recall is that Sister Teresa Canaviri from Bolivia was Minister of Women. And she was the one who took our written paragraph inside to struggle with our language inside the formal meeting. And for the first time, we were able to, so there's a commission on the status of women, CSW. For the first time, they took up one of our recommendations, and it had to do with the right to participate in the drafting of plans and programs on topics related to their lives, and that the countries must respect and implement these recommendations. And we were happy because we'd finally gotten our recommendation on the table. The second aspect of our arrival to the Beijing +5 conference in New York is that we were able to decide on the logo and introduction of FEME as FEME because we were now global. It was the sum of all of the work of the regions. So in this context, we began with discussions that had to do with questioning the feminist movement. Because I said, Indigenous women are not struggling on gender issues. Of course, we didn't know what feminist or gender or, claiming our rights, that big word in Spanish, reivindicar. We didn't know what any of those things were at the time. But we did know that we wanted to get individual and collective rights. So that was the first table where we debated what the feminists were saying versus what we were saying. We defend collective rights because if we don't have territory, we are nobody. And it's a benchmark. I'm not sure where all of that is written down, but you could investigate in terms of that first conversation. But little by little, sister, in the following conferences and the following revisions, we have been contributing. And I just want to end this part by saying that after the Beijing Action Plan, the sustainable or the Millennium Development Goals arose, And they were something that countries were working on for some time, and we analyzed that. In what way is the Beijing Action Plan being included in the Millennium Development Goals? And then how much progress had been made on the Millennium Development Plan in relation to the Beijing process. Then later you have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the 2030 Agenda. And we have participated in that process as well. And to see what kind of responsibilities did the states have to take on to advance the rights of Indigenous women through that process. And we have really learned a lot. In the process, we have learned to work together to develop relationships. We've learned about the mechanisms that we can use. We've had success in some and not in others. But now, as Indigenous women, we are involved in these processes. In our case, in the Americas, we are continuing to provide follow-up on the Cairo Action Plan and the Population and Development Conference, and we're following the ECLAC mechanism as well. And we're also following what's happening in the American system, the inter-American system. On the international level, FEMI is following the Agenda 2030. The Beijing Action Plan is still in effect or still relevant, and we are still looking to see what's happening with Indigenous women in the conferences that have to do with the environment and climate change, because we are being terribly affected by the impact of climate change in the communities and biodiversity and the production of food and everything else. But we still need to learn more about these processes and to really take ownership over them and to have the possibility of dedicating time to each scenario, working on things in a joint way so that our achievements as FEMI can be representative at the international level. And so we have organized ourselves by regions. We've been promoting intergenerational participation, and we've been strengthening the qualities and leadership capacities of sisters of different generations. And also I would also say that it's interdisciplinary, so different professions. I always say that the movement needs all of us, men and women. The important thing is to figure out how to work together and how to complement each other to be able to reach representative results from FEMI in a very inclusive way. And with that effort, adding to the efforts, you know that we are proud now to be able to have the General Recommendation 39 of CEDAW. If we look only at the scenario where we participate as Indigenous women, inserting ourselves in the official scenarios, and of the social movement of Indigenous women, we see that there is a lot of work and that we have to network among ourselves, we have to reach consensus among ourselves, but also in relationship to the social movement, because we understood in the process that alone we were not going to be able to do anything. One of the examples that we have from FEMI and from the global network is that we were able to reach consensus and support on building alliances based on mutual respect and understanding differences. That's what we were able to do in CSW around the topic of female genital mutilation and the need to eradicate that practice in the indigenous communities and in the countries where that was still practiced. This recommendation, which came out of CSW, has to do with all of that, even if it's in English or Spanglish. By listening and repeating, as they say, we were able to do advocacy along with the feminist movement of Europe, who did have power in the official government meetings. And then the feminists of our region also had a certain openness to Indigenous women. So here in the region, we were able to make sure that the ministries of women had preparatory meetings before they went to CSW so that they would include the right to respect the lives of Indigenous women who are defending collective rights, such as the rights to water and natural resources, etc. So all of that is now precedent in the documents that the ministers from Latin America and the Caribbean have. In the scenario of ECLAC last year and now in the CEDAW. It's a very important precedent, the fact that collective and Indigenous rights of Indigenous women and girls have been included. And this is a tool to help us continue doing advocacy. And it can go to each state so that each state might recognize the need to implement these processes. So we all need each other to go through these processes, whether it's lawyers, activists, professionals, young women, older women, those who are working specifically on policy, but also to keep in mind this intergenerational relationship, articulated leadership from the communities and from the communities. It's a process that must continue the whole cycle from the local to the national to the international and back. And if not, it doesn't do what we need for it to do. And the Agenda 2030 says that no one should be left behind. But we are not, we haven't been left behind, but we've kind of been left pending because we can't stay back and wait for someone else to do it for us. We have to be active. We have to walk forward because we still have a good part of our agenda pending. And this has to do with the political decisions in our countries, where unfortunately we have not had as much influence as we should have. So I will leave it here for now to take some questions and comments. And I was saying, "Boo, how am I going to fill 2 hours?" But I see that we're almost there. So an embrace to all of you, and thank you for listening. I hope I haven't bored you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarasela, for sharing with us that journey of Indigenous women and the formation of and to know we're constantly learning about the history of the Indigenous people's movement and seeing how far we've come all this time until now. And so it's always a learning opportunity for all of us. So thank you for that. So sisters, we still have some time that you can ask your questions or give your comments. you can share your experiences as well if you've interacted with some of these processes that Dr. Priscilla just mentioned in your own regions, or if with the Indigenous women's movement in your own regions. So if anyone has a question, please you can put your hand up, or you can unmute and ask the question or your comment or your experience. Anyone? Jonari?
Gracias, buenos días, buenas tardes.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you sisters. I'm very grateful to Tarsila for the excellent information that she has provided, and so glad we've been able to have her here and to listen to her. Sister, in terms of Indigenous peoples and our struggle for our territorial rights, I feel like there has been a lot of progress, as you have said, in the struggles that you've been involved in. And as you tell us all these stories, I understand more the progress that's been made. But what instrument now do you think is the most feasible to use to talk about Indigenous peoples and our territories? Thank you. Should I answer, or is there another question?
Is
What
there
do you
another
think?
question so that you can answer both? I think you can just answer, and then the other person, when they put their hands up, will be able to speak afterwards.
Bueno. Hermanas, lo primero que
Okay, sisters, the first thing that we need to know is whether your country has signed on to ILO Convention 169. That's the most important legal instrument. Why? Because it is a convention that has constitutional weight in each of your countries if you have signed on to that. So Convention 169 is the first convention, and it's complemented by the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But you need to do an analysis of your constitution and see the territorial recognition of Indigenous peoples in each country. You're from Panama, is that right? No, I'm from Nicaragua. Ah, okay, you're from Nicaragua. And what part of the Nicaragua are you from? Yes, the Atlantic coast in the north. So how is the territorial autonomy working in your region? I've heard a lot about it. Because if we have Convention 169, which is the international backing and rules that all the states have taken on, you have to also look at the national constitution and look at laws related to Indigenous rights in each country and how that is related to territory. All of this is what you bring together. When you have territorial rights, but your territory is invaded or victim of violence of some kind or invaded by any particular company, you can use Convention 169 because it means the state is violating its commitment to the convention. And so they have to respond legally and to explain themselves. I know that right now you have some territory problems with with settlers invading and so on. The same thing is happening in the Peruvian jungle, where a lot of settlers arrived, and now they have become like owners of the areas that they've invaded. And this is often because of a gap in the national laws, which doesn't recognize our rights. And we also have to look at our subsoil rights, because right now the state is giving concessions to companies without consulting indigenous peoples. And then later, the indigenous peoples end up being expelled from their territories because some company wants to come in and exploit mineral resources that are under our land, or perhaps to drill for oil, or perhaps to do logging. So I would recommend that you look at Convention 169, that you look at the Constitution of your country and see what the right to an autonomous government is made of in Nicaragua, because there is this autonomy that you have that has to do with your territorial rights as indigenous peoples on the Atlantic coast.
Muchísimas gracias, hermana.
Okay, thank you very much, sister.
Now, there's a question on the chat from Richard, and she asks, where do you see the indigenous women movement now? What has been the gaps from your perspective, and where should we focus to strategize our movements across different regions?
Lo que nos falta, a
What
pesar de todo,
we don't have, in spite of all the efforts that have been made, is that political movement, not just as women, but as indigenous peoples as a whole. The movement with a political clarity in relationship to the states and in relationship to the right to participate at a decision-making level in policies. We're lacking that still. We as indigenous women, and take note that we are in the process of formation and information to empower ourselves, and that empowerment should lead us to political vision and the possibility of participating in political spaces. But we are part of that movement making that effort. We are not moving forward with the same political vision necessarily. And my conclusion is that we have had some strength as an indigenous women, especially as an indigenous movement, with really key leadership. But then that leadership has been weakened. In the case of women, we continue working together, we continue making great efforts, and we have a vision for the future that we've built together. When you look at the question, like, why do we have this leadership school? For what? It's not for entertainment, right? It's so that you can be better informed and that you can also play a role from the place where you are. But what that means that we can't leave the collective vision of our efforts and our objectives. In many cases,
participan en este grupo, ¿no? Conociendo, aprendiendo, pero luego solo toman el camino individual. De alguna manera tenemos que rogar que donde vayan.
If you participate learning, you need to then be able to go to other places where you can fight and contribute to the struggle to get our indigenous people's rights. So This is the movement with young people, women from different ages, share processes and build a movement for the recognition of rights. That's what we're building.
La estrategia que hemos seguido modestamente de lo local a lo global.
The strategy that we and the advocacy from the local to the national has given this to us. We are the reference as Indigenous women in the national and international space. And at the Continental Network of Indigenous Women, we've never worked with projects, and not all of us have funds and resources, but we have maintained our organizations alive, and we have always kept our voice in international spaces and organizing ourselves. So I think that we have to have this clear, because we're part of a movement that is building. And we need that clarity for political advocacy. In 92, we all knew that that was not a celebration. It was an invasion. Now, they're talking everywhere against racism. It has been recognized that there are racist states, racist politicians, and that racism is not by whites, but it's in other spaces, and we need to fight against it all. And this is thanks to the contributions from the local level, bringing it up to other levels. In Peru, we started fighting against racism against Indigenous women, learning from feminist women, because they were saying women should not be represented in a sexist way in TV programs and other spaces. So what did we say? Well, Indigenous women cannot be represented in comedy spaces because of our condition as Indigenous. And they were able to take us out of a program called La Paisana Jacinta. And this was because of strategies in Peru. Indigenous Blacks, they're the most discriminated in Peru. So all positive actions from the individual to the collective adds up. And this needs to turn into a movement with common objectives.
Me gustaría agregar que hay regiones más difíciles.
I want to add also that there are regions that are more difficult. For example, Latin America or Las Americas, those are the examples I'm using. But Asia has also particular issues, the Pacific, also Africa. They all have their particular issues and problems because of languages, geographical situations, the government's policies. Everything has to do with the situation. So you need to analyze your own regional context and national and local contexts from other examples, and start building collective processes from this work.
Thank you. Is there someone else who has a question or a comment? Sure. Anyone? Well, maybe I can just ask a follow-up question from what you've said, based on your experience with, being not just being in the movement, but building a movement, what advice would you give, Indigenous women who want to join the movement or want to build a movement within their own countries or within their own regions, from a national to an international level? What advice would you give them to be able to do that? Effective advocacy for Indigenous women in the spaces that you've been in and the spaces that are for Indigenous women.
Muchas veces
Often,
nos gana el sectarismo.
sectarism or sectarianism is prevalent, and I think that we need to eradicate all sectarian attitudes. So if you're a leader of a small organization or group structure, it also has to open up for possibilities for other women who are interested in contributing and becoming part of that movement. So opportunities for them to enter that space. So there are two aspects to this. One, opening up from those who lead the process, and on the other hand, for the sisters who are coming new and who are interested, have the right to speak and to ask to participate. But the important thing is to maintain the line of respect. Nobody is more or less. Respect is vital. Respect to leadership and the processes. If we have clear that we all deserve respect among each other, and from that attitude, we can unite our efforts. And it's also important to know what unites us. What are our objectives? For example, from the local to the global, the main topics that we have from the Beijing Action Plan, look, they have to do with land and territory. It has to do with economic autonomy, life free of violence, health, exercise of power, and decision-making, which comes from the bottom up, education and training, public policies and institutions, statistics, and communication. Those are from the Beijing Action Plan, and they affect us directly. So where are we all together, dear sisters? There's one crucial topic. First, the right to land and territories. That continues to be a common objective at the global level, a collective goal. Second, life free of violence. From this region, we've added an S, violences. So in Spanish, it's life free of violences, types of violence. It's not just domestic violence or gender violence. When we talk about violence, there's also ethnic intersectionality. So that means is that just because we're indigenous, we're also violated in terms of our individual and collective rights. In terms of statistics, it is a consensus already that indigenous women are asking for data and statistics that are disaggregated at the global level, because we're invisible otherwise. When we talk about types of violence, we don't appear in that data. So there are topics that are common at the global level, even though they come from a global initiative. That's the wealth of our movement and the richness of our movement. In FIMI, we are given priority.
A ver, ¿a cuál? De todas las que he mencionado.
From all of the ones that I have mentioned, could you tell me which one you think we're giving priority to? For example, the second point, economic autonomy. The INI program responds somehow to that, so that young women and women can access funds and somehow generate economic autonomy little by little. Then we have education and training. We have given a program, we have a program for training at the global level because FIMI is global. So this program has to do with contributions for global participation. The other topic that is going to be launched again, it has to do with violence, is the no violence surveillance. So they all become more concrete, they all settled, and from FIMI, we are responding to those global aspects. Others have to do more with the abilities that we need to develop for advocacy in the national levels, the national spaces. Because the process has demonstrated that we have achieved quite a bit in the international arena in terms of international mechanisms. But the biggest challenge that we have is international spaces, because we have governments and states that are really tough, and there's a lot of racism in the exercise of power, and in terms of creating opportunities for everyone based on respect and the rights of everybody. So that is the biggest challenge at the national level.
Thank you so much for that. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? We still have about 10 minutes before we can close this session. So if you have any questions or comments, please do so now. Checking the chat. Anyone?
Y si no hay más, creo que cerraríamos.
If there are no more questions or comments, I think we should close, because they're not obligated to speak. I know that 2 hours is a really long time. And I thank you very much for your questions, for your time. And I always give you guys tasks, because you have to be better all the time and to be really well informed. But I would like that, Winnie, in the evaluation, if you can always add the failures or the lacks that we all have, so that we can find a better methodology and one that is participatory. I say hello to my sister Aymara from Puno. I think you're there. And why? Well, because we also have to recognize that we all have the same level of knowledge. For some of you, it could be very familiar, very well known already to talk about CSW or Beijing, but for others, it's brand new. So since I like to go by lesson done, lesson learned, we need to improve our methodology so that everyone can really obtain that knowledge. And we also need spaces where people can have collective comments, where you get together and share things that are clear, things that are not clear, because that is what participation is about. Participation enriches processes and dialogues, and it empowers us all.
Thank you.
Yo, antes de que se retire,
Sister Tarsila, before you go, I am Hortensia Simon, Maya Cachiriel. I always get so excited every time I hear the story of those great women and men who opened up the path so that we all can now talk about rights and defending our lands, our territories, because before that opportunity didn't exist. And nowadays, globally, to be able to talk about our rights and to know our story, our history, that is so important. Yesterday, precisely, we joined from Comalapa the prayers for our sister. That doesn't happen just like that from a single, just one person. The learning that we have from here is that we can get together. And what we're learning from the United Nations is that we can do this advocacy and that we've learned how to come together and to create those intergenerational spaces. So thank you so much. And before you go, I also invite everyone, all of the participants, to please turn on your cameras and to see that the smiles, the energy that every day gifts us, so that our sister and our teacher, Tarsila Rivera, can also see our faces, what we all look like from where we are. Yes, thank you so much, sister, for making time in your very busy agenda. It's a gift for us to get the opportunity to hear your knowledge, your recommendations, so that we don't stumble. And if we fall down, we learn to get up again with your words and recommendations. So thank you so much. And I asked our grandfathers and grandmothers to continue with you in your path, illuminating your path, and thank you for all the doors that you personally have opened for us. And let's hope that we all can continue giving those steps behind you. And as you have said, there's no point in advancing individually by ourselves, because the power and the strength comes from the collective effort. So thank you thank you to all the ones who turn on their cameras. It's not the same to look at faces or to look at just lots of little black squares. Thank you. Big hugs to all of you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you again, Tonya Tarsila. And we have a small gift for you, which we will share with you on email. And it's from the Global School in recognition for your participation and your contribution to this particular session and for this 10th edition. And so from all of us, the women from Africa, Asia, Latin America, North America, and Pacific, we want to give you this small token of appreciation for your contribution and for your knowledge sharing, and for sharing your experiences with us. So thank you so much. And I can see on chat very many ladies have said it's been very clear what you have shared. And so I hope that we will take this with us into the different things that we're doing in our own communities to continue to grow our national movements and the regional movements and onto the international movements. So thank you so much, Tonya Tarsila. We wish you all the best as you start your day or as you continue your day, and we hope to see you again very soon.
Gracias. Bueno, muchas gracias, muy amable. Hasta el próximo año.
Thank you. You've all been very kind. See you next year.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bueno. Después de haber escuchado.
So after listening to our great Teacher Tarsila, let's now continue with our cameras on today, please. And we're going to now do an exercise from Guatemala, from the Mayan
question?
calendar. Oh, there's a question.
Yeah, just before we continue, I want to make an announcement so that we don't forget. And then you can continue afterwards.
Está bien.
Yeah, sorry,
That's
sorry
fine.
for that. Yeah. So I was just a reminder that on Wednesday the class time has changed. I announced this last week, but I'm announcing it again today so that we don't have confusion when Wednesday comes. Please remember that when the class was previously in the evening, Guatemala time, but now it's changed, and it's going to be in the morning. And because for the next session, our expert for the next session is not going to be here, so we're going to postpone that to another time. But just a kind reminder that on Wednesday, the class will be at 8 a.m. Guatemala time. So for sisters in Africa and Asia, it's no longer going to be on Thursday morning for you, but it's going to be on Wednesday afternoon or evening, depending on your time. So please take note of that so that we're able to do that. We're able to attend the class and not wait for the next day. So again, 8 a.m. We have our classes at 8 a.m. Guatemala time on Wednesday. And I think Joy has another announcement that she wants to make. So please, Joy, go ahead.
Thank you, Winnie. Hi, sisters. I hope everyone is doing well. Just to repeat what Winnie was saying earlier, today we were actually supposed to have two guests with us. One is Sister Tarsila, and the other guest, Sister Mirna Cunningham, was supposed to come and join us in the second half of today's session. But she unfortunately had to attend a very urgent meeting, and she will not be here with us today. We will try to compensate this second half for a different day. So we will let you know through email and through WhatsApp messages as to when Sister Mirna can come and take a class for us. So like Winnie said, on the 22nd of March, we will be having the class at 8 a.m. even though it's a Wednesday. And I can see a question from Irene. She's saying, is it for this week only? Okay, Irene, so if you look at your calendar, you will see that we will be having this 8 a.m. class on the 22nd of March, 8 a.m., which is a Wednesday. And yes, so for the next coming Wednesdays, this is the only 8 a.m. class that we will be having, which is the 22nd of March. 29th will go as the usual Wednesdays, which is 8 p.m. So yes, it is only for this coming Wednesday. So any other questions regarding the times of the upcoming sessions?
Madeleine has a hand up.
Okay.
Madeleine, please. Madeleine, you can unmute. Okay.
Buenos días,
Good
hermana.
morning, sisters. A question about the schedule. So is that only going to be for this week, or is that going to be modified for the rest of the classes because I work at that time. I'd already made changes and everything was already planned. So that is my question.
Okay. Natalie, this is only for the 22nd of March. Other Wednesday classes will continue as the original timing, which is at 8 p.m. Does that answer? I hope.
Okay, gracias.
Thank you.
Seham?
You're muted, Seham.
Yes. Because of the Wednesday classes, I missed almost all of them because it's for me in Egypt, it's in the very early morning. So in the time I was sleeping. So I hope if there is possibility for changes, for anything that could help in this. Do you understand me?
Yes. Winnie, would you like to take that?
Yeah. So Seham, I think at the very beginning we had told everyone that we were going to have different times for classes so that we can accommodate everyone. So sometimes the sisters in Latin America are actually and North America, some of them are waking up at 3 a.m. to come to the class, and the others, even in Africa, some are waking up at 4 as well, others at 5. So everyone is having to sacrifice time to attend class. In Asia, I know some of them are staying up until 1 a.m. sometimes when we have very late classes. So and we made this very clear at the beginning that it's going to be a sacrifice for everyone. So sometimes there are people who stay up late and sometimes there are people who wake up really early. So again, it's and I think we will speak more about this in just a few minutes. It's about you and how you plan your time and your commitment to the school as well, because everyone has to everyone has to sacrifice some time or to set aside some time, whether it's very early in the morning, whether it's very late at night, because of we're not able to make changes because again we're in very different time zones. We have people who are 12 hours behind me or 12 hours ahead of me. So there's that consideration that we need to also think about when we're looking at the timing of the classes, that when we're planning the calendar, we make sure that everyone, it might not be comfortable for everyone, but because there's nothing we can actually do about the time zones. It's not anything that's within our powers. So we really appreciate that when you look at the time, you also realize it's not just one group of people who are waking up very early or very late. Everyone is doing the same thing. Some people are staying up late, others are waking up early, just to accommodate the different time zones that we have. Right?
I'll try to manage that.
Thank you, Winnie. Seham, do you have problems with attending the Monday and Friday class?
Sorry? The question again?
I'll just switch off. Yeah. So I would just like to know if you have problems with the Monday and Friday classes. Because I think, Seham, I think, no? Okay. So we'll like to use Seham and see how we can proceed.
Yeah, we'll write to you separately and see how we can support you better.
I'm really sorry, sisters. Sometimes when I don't have the calendar in front of me, I tend to miss out information. Please excuse me, but I want to clarify Medalit's question. Earlier, she had asked me if the 8 a.m. class is only for this week, or if there's any other 8 a.m. class on a Wednesday. So I want to clarify that, yes, we do. So there'll be 2 8 a.m. classes on a Wednesday. One is the 22nd of March, which is day after tomorrow. And another class is on the 12th of April. This has already been decided since the beginning of the school. If you look at your calendar, some of you must have already been aware, but I'm just repeating just in case you've not seen the full complete calendar. But you will notice that in module 4, the 12th of April, we begin class at 8 a.m. This is also a Wednesday. This is because our guest for that day, Joanne Culling, will not be in her country. I think she'll be somewhere in Europe, and this is a good time for her to join us. So just keep in mind that the 22nd of March and the 12th of April are 8 a.m. classes. Okay. So, like we mentioned earlier, Anima, yes, please go ahead.
So maybe Joy, just for those 2 days, if you could just send a reminder on the group, I think that will solve everyone's problem. Just for that particular 2 days.
I think in Asia, I've already sent that. I've already sent the reminder for the 22nd.
You send the reminder.
Naturally, when the 12th of April is closer, when 12th of April approaches, I'll send a reminder for the 12th of April as well. But for the 22nd of March, it's already been informed in the Asia group.
Yeah. My concern was just that if you could probably remind on that same day on the group, I think that would help the group. That's all. Otherwise, it's okay.
Thank you, Anima. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, can we move to the next session? I think we would just like to take this opportunity to do a small exercise with you. It'll take just about 20 to 25 minutes, and then we can close. It's something that we usually do with the school, and Orte would take the lead for this. So please hang on, don't leave yet, and I have over session to Orte to lead us for the activity. Sister Orte, over to you.
I think, I don't know if she dropped out.
She dropped out?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can't see her.
I'll just text me.
All right. So maybe I can just briefly share what we wanted to do for the next few minutes is hear from you what your experiences have been, what your experience is with the global school. I think the time issue is usually universal for every school that we've had in the past few years, especially now because it's online. The time issue has always come up because we're always doing it at very different times. Just as I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's very late, sometimes it's very early. So we are aware that this is sometimes a challenge for some of us. And that's why from the very beginning, we constantly, we always tell you, please look at your calendar. Make sure you look at the time. We try to spread it out as much as possible. But now we're going to go around for everyone to let us know what your experience has been or is with the school. If there's any specific challenge that you want to highlight for us to take note of during your classes, because I think I don't think I I must say that this is something that has been observed by not just us, but also some of the experts that have come, is that there's your participation is sometimes very, very low. And so maybe you can let us know how we can help you to not just to participate, but make this school as interesting as possible and increase your participation, because remember, your participation is key. It's also very unfair for someone to come and speak to you for almost an hour and a half, and then there's no comment or there's no question, or things like that. So please let us know what your experience is, so that we can also share some of these notes or some of these challenges or some of the your perspectives with our experts to help with the learning process, because all of us are learning, not just you, but also the experts are learning from your experiences. When you ask them questions, it's also a learning it's a learning space for all of us. And so I'm going to just go through the list as I see it on my screen, so that we don't waste time. So I'll start with you, Regina. You're the one who's first on my screen. So we'll start. Please let us know what your experience has been in the school for the past few weeks. We've been here for a few, actually quite a bit of time now, almost 2 months or so, or slightly over 2 months. So tell us what your experience has been, and if there's a specific challenge you want to highlight that we can take note of as we go forward.
Okay, thank you, Winnie. I hope everyone can hear me well, because my connection is not really good since it's heavy raining outside. So yeah, actually, for me myself, before I apply for the class, like I am already prepare myself. I'm aware about the time difference and stuff, and I already talked to my director also, which he can allow me to lessen my work a little bit. So I just said like the very urgent work that I should do it. So he allowed me also, if there's some work that I can delegate, so I can delegate it. So that's how I managed my time. And I also thank you very much also for Joy, who always like keep sending us reminding for every week classes. So every day I got reminders from my phone that I will have class at that same time. So that's how I work on my time, so I won't miss any class, and I can come like 10 minutes before the class, because I also have some work to do. And and Joy also sent us like the calendar, so I suggested you to see all the schedule from module 1 till the module 5, so you won't miss any class, and you can know the time, the exact time. So if there is any change, you can always take your calendar, and you can always adapt your file in a Google Drive to your Google Calendar, so it will give you reminding also, so you will have a be reminder, so you won't miss it. That's how I work on my time. And about the class, actually for me, it is very enriching. It is very good experience for me. I got a lot of knowledge and stuff from here. But there are also some time when I was a little bit passive, because recently I got a lot of works, so I have no time to read the topic before, so I don't manage to listen carefully, because for me sometimes like when they only like share the experience without a contextual things in the community, it's very hard for me to ask questions, so because it's about international and stuff, and me myself have no experience about that, so I only like to listen to this to their story and stuff. But when they talk about the contextual thing, what they've done in the community and stuff, not only in international, I get excited and I want to ask questions. So it's only the problem. But I always listening to every presentation from the experts. So that's for me. Thank you, Winnie.
Thank you so much, Regina. And just from what she has said, if Just to confirm with everyone that everyone has their calendar, because all of you were sent for your calendars. All of you were sent the links to the reading resources. So if anyone does not have access or does not have their calendar, or does not have a link to the reading resource, please write on the chat, and then we can resend it to you, because everyone was sent. Joy sent it to everyone. So if you don't have it for whatever reason, please let us know so that we share with you. So please write on the chat if you do not have your calendar, or you don't have your reading link for any reason. All right. Okay. So Doris.
Good evening, sisters. For me, since the time of the beginning of the school, I already had, well, I have a busy schedule because I recently transferred to the Philippine program. I am the focal point of the UPACAT, the network of Indigenous peoples organizations here in the Philippines. And then at the same time, I am also handling the communications team, helping guide the new staff there. So I really have a busy schedule, but I anticipated that already. And unfortunately, not like Regina, my workload has not been decreased. It has increased even this year. But I really am trying my best to attend all the classes. I was not able to attend like 4 sessions last month because we had this event on Indigenous languages, a 1-week event. And I compensated with trying to read the readings that was listed in our Google Drive. But aside from that, I am really grateful for this opportunity to join the school because I am learning a lot, and I really need the knowledge that I am learning here for the comms work that we are doing in the organization, and also for the advocacy part of the national network that I am helping lead. Maybe the only thing that makes it hard for me sometimes is that there is this sort of information overload because many of the terms are really heavy and technical. So maybe I think some of our sisters are also experiencing that when we become silent and all that. It's because we're trying to absorb the terms and the processes that are being discussed. But this is really helpful, especially for us, knowing that many of the Indigenous women do not really have a voice. And I know that for a fact because even here in the Philippines, it's difficult to speak. And then going international, to the international level, it's also a bit scary because, well, you know, speaking in English and all that, it's difficult sometimes. When you have the language, you are more well versed with using your language. So there, thank you.
Thank you so much, Doris, for sharing. Irene? Irene?
Hello, everyone. To me, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, yes. Hello, sisters. To me, it's been a learning experience since we started the classes. to be honest, there are some things I was hearing for the first time. So I want to appreciate our tutors for bringing this. I want to appreciate Phoebe for allowing us to join with our sisters from other parts of the world. We're learning from each other. Yeah, and the challenge maybe we have is because some of us, we are working and it's quite overwhelming, but we do try. I remember I missed one class, but that was because of the confusion. In the first week, I didn't know what time. So I joined, it said maybe you should join 5 a.m. Then I tried joining and the class was already done. So, but after then, I've been joining classes. It's been a learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Siham?
My experience with family program is at the beginning I was just confusing about the timing because it's the first time to attend Zoom meeting and to take sessions. The next thing is, as I'm an Arabic woman, English is not my first language, and as my sister said, there is like difficult terms. Most of the time, maybe I didn't get it, or just like I didn't understand it so well. This is also lead me to lower or less participation. Plus, as I said, that the time of Wednesday session is just it's so early for me, but inshallah in the next time I will do my best to attend. Second thing I want to say or participate in is it's 3 hours. So in all the session we didn't take a break like just for 5 minutes to anyone like to go to the bathroom. Like for some people, for me, like to pray, to take a drink or something, like to recharge. I think it's important to take a break. Maybe as maybe you are more busy, I don't know, but it's very important yani, for me to take a break like just for 5 minutes. Hello, do you understand me? Winnie?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So this is my experience. But rather than that, yani, big thanks for you guys. Yani, I really appreciate your work. It was yani, amazing.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I know that in Winnie, you know Arabic, yes?
Yes.
مرحبا.
أهلا شكرا. All right. Thank you, Siham, for that. Janari, do you want to share?
Buenos días. Buenas tardes.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I haven't had too much problem in terms of abiding by the calendar. Just that on Friday, I was trying to connect with class, but the internet connection was really bad that day. In the end, I couldn't participate at all because it was such an unstable connection. Right now, it's better. So thanks to God, I'm able to participate more. And some of the presentations that are made, I don't have questions because perhaps I feel pretty clear about what they have said. So I don't have questions. But when I do have questions, I try to ask them. We've been doing this process now for about 2 months, and I'm very grateful to FEME and all of the speakers because we are learning many things that many of us did not know before. I didn't know that there were these instruments that could support us in some ways as Indigenous women. I'm very grateful to FEME for these sessions and for the school that's being provided to us. And it's really contributions for increasing our leadership as Indigenous women. So that's all. And just, well, one difficulty I have is getting into the database and to go to the FEME application. And you sent us a document to initiate a session there, and I haven't been able to gain access to that space. But otherwise, everything has been working well, and I'm thankful for everyone to allow us to be here sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shoneri. Can we have Sitlali?
Hola, buenos días, buenas noches, compañeras.
Hello, good day, good evening to all of you sisters. In terms of what you are asking us, I would say that with the topics being discussed, everything has been clear and the participation of the speakers has been excellent. I've learned many things. But yes, there is a lot of information, as some of my other sisters have said. But I think little by little, we're going to be adapting and reading all the materials that you have sent us, and we can analyze things. And in this sense, I think it's going to help us a lot on our advocacy plans. In terms of the times, I have also been accommodating my times and managing it. At first, it was a little hard for me because of all of the community work that we have here with our organizations and in the community. But as I said, little by little, I have been sort of getting into the rhythm of things. And so far, I haven't had any problem in accessing the meetings or to being up on the topics that we are being informed about. So I just want to thank FEME for this great opportunity that you are giving us to acquire new knowledge and to learn about new topics of international nature, because before I personally did not know about these spaces. So I think it's important for members of Indigenous communities to have all of this information clear and to be able to make our demands that our rights be guaranteed. So that's what I have to say for now. And if there's any questions that I have, I will try to make them in the next sessions. I will ask questions.
Thank you, Sitlali. Juliana? Juliana, are you there?
Hola, hermana. Sí, muchas gracias. Perdón.
Hello, sisters. Yes. Sorry, there's a lot of wind here, and so sometimes the signal is disconnecting, but mostly I'm here listening. So thank you definitely for this important process. It's just helping us to understand the dynamics that exist to continue strengthening our processes We have seen that there are so many spaces in which to do advocacy, but we have understood that maybe we can't be in all spaces at once, but some might be able to specialize on specific topics where we can make greater contributions. And so all of this life experience that we're seeing and the people who are coming to talk with us who have had such a long path of work, and we're here because of them. So it makes me very satisfied to have met some of the people that we have just heard about. And these experiences encourage us so they're not just something that we're listening to, but these are experiences that we can relate to. Some of the women in my household have worked with one of the professors that spoke with us here, and it's great to be able to be involved in this transmission of knowledge from generation to generation. This helps us as young people to be able to continue taking steps that our forebearers began. So as I was saying to some of the sisters, at first it was hard for me to understand the calendar and the schedules, whether the schedule was in the morning or at night or a little bit later. But I understand the process better now. And that has helped me to be more present during this process of formation. So on my part, I'm just very grateful to FEMI for providing us this space to continue strengthening our capacities and to continue building processes which help us, but also allows us to leave behind footsteps that others can follow in. Thank you, Winnie.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Herma?
Hi. Good evening, good morning, sisters. I'm glad I'm just sharing the experience with you because it is for the first time I'm hearing these processes, the UN, United States, but I'll be trying have a problem with network. For the last 2 weeks, I've not attended the 3 sessions because of the network. I had gone to another place that's experiencing some network problem, but I'll be trying to follow what others are learning. According to the experience or asking the questions, because it's for the first time hearing these words, I'll be making sure that I at least ask some questions to what the speakers are saying. They are teaching us very good. They are encouraging us as Indigenous women. I'll be trying to follow the calendar very well. Sometimes we wake up early in the morning early in the morning, so I'll be looking forward to make sure I attend all the classes. Thank you.
Thank you, Herma. Anima? Anima, are you there? Okay.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear? Okay. Thank you. Well, the whole session for me is, I think, very enriching. This is the first time that I have come across with sisters from all over the country. So first of all, I would like to thank Fimi and all the speaker who have given time to, help us to understand how UN mechanism looks like, how it has to be tackled. I think I'm still understanding the basic. I am not from law background or advocacy or something like that. I've never done that. So for me, I think I'm just normal indigenous women who's trying to understand how the international level or how that uh, you know top level advocacy works. So it's very different for me to come into this platform. So I was very happy when I got into this. I'm really thankful to Fimi and to everyone, to give this opportunity. Um, I think we all had challenges. So yes, this is also my challenge actually with the timing, like the class hours being very long. And I am a person somehow who wants to be dedicated. In case if I'm into something, then I love to give my 100%. I think reading is my weakness because I have many other works. I'm sure, I mean, all of you are busy. So somehow, my present work is very hectic. I don't know how to explain, but somehow I'm not able to give timings for reading. And I think that is where I have to blame myself, because if we don't read, definitely we will not come with the kind of question that the speakers are expecting from us. So that place, I think I would like to blame myself, because I am not able to give time on reading. And Joy have shared, I think, very well in advance with all the reading materials. And even in between, she have shared with us 2 or 3 times, I believe. So I think Femi is doing a very wonderful job from their end, but somehow I think I'll talk only on my behalf. So I'm the one who's lacking because I'm not doing my homework. And somehow I'm blaming, also my schedule. I want to do it, but because I am so engaged in so many schedule that somehow I'm not able to give that time to that reading part, because our classes are happening every alternate days, and which means that we have just one day in between to read. And somehow the reading materials are, I think, with a lot of pages as well. So so yeah, so I think that was one thing which from my end I would like to share. But again, as I mentioned, that everything is so good, and I'm really lucky to have this kind of session, and I'm looking forward, and I will want to be engaged in future. We have another, I think, 1.5 months of classes with FIMI. So I'm hoping that I'm going to take a lot after these classes. I'm sure I'm not going empty hands. So I'm really glad to be a part of this. So this is my feedback. So that's all. Thank you all, FIMI team.
Thank you, Anima. So we have 3 people left. Richa, you can go next, and then after Richa, Maria, and then Bridan.
Okay, thank you, Winnie. I think this self-reflective session is very important. For me, the challenge was that I could not follow up well during the time I was traveling with my work. And like rest of our sisters have shared, that the schedule and my work is really hectic. Sometimes I'm having like some conflicting meetings. No, sometimes I have to leave for half an hour or so, but the meeting allocated takes more time there, and I could not come back. So things like that. But I'm trying my best to give my 100%, but yet again, I know that I've not really been able to manage well. But for the rest of the classes, I'm really trying to be able to be more interactive and give my 100%. And also because when the calendar comes to my Gmail, it comes into Nepali time, and when I'm traveling with my work, it's different time. So and also the internet issue sometimes in Nepal, and the power cut issues, those are the things, those are the challenges. Besides that, the classes, I think like what our sisters have shared, it has been very learning experience and quite new. So many topics are very new to us, and it'll take some time, it'll take time for us to understand, and sometimes it is very difficult to contextualize in our context. No, that's why also I think interactive sessions in the classes are quite a few from my observation also. But we should have this kind of interaction sessions more within ourselves, also within our sisters that we are sharing this space with. I think it'll help a lot to open up within ourselves also, because I remember one time there was a group session, but it took around like 10-15 minutes for all of us to speak up and discuss. So I think we need to have more of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Maria?
Thank you very much, Cody. My network is unstable, that's why I put my camera. Okay. For me, the experience has been great. First, I would like to thank the FIMI team and the Columbia University for the great space. I'm really learning. And since the start of the global school, I've learned a lot, especially on different topics. And it's really motivating and encouraging. And different parts of the world. It's amazing learning from the experiences. Concerning the timing, the class time, for the first time it was challenging, but with advisor, now I've catch up and I've been able to attend all the classes. Yeah, and I'm also grateful for the speakers, the facilitators, for taking us through various topics. It is really informative, and I've learned a lot concerning the different topics. Yeah. And also there are terms which I'm learning for the first time. Yeah, I'm really learning, and also it's encouraging because it motivates me to read. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. Brittany?
Yes, good morning. Can you see me and hear me? Can you hear me? Good. As far as the experience that I have had with FIMI, with this, well, for me, it's quite sad because I would have liked to give much more with FIMI, to be able to express more, to talk more, perhaps. But unfortunately, I have not been able to schedule the classes well enough. I'm literally busy from Monday to Sunday. Every day I'm busy. I'm always in class. I think I missed once because I had an exam. and I could not be in class. I couldn't be with the phone and the computer at the same time. So that time I missed. So I have classes every morning. So I've been trying to combine it. Sometimes I have two classes, sometimes I'm busy all mornings, then sometimes I'm free 1 hour. I was not able to choose the schedule. I'm trying to do everything I can to be up to date. So what I'm trying to do as a solution to that is that there are times when I am in class, I'm with the camera, and then I'm with Fimi at the same time listening. But sometimes I cannot talk because I'm in class. So I start writing down all the topics that they're discussing. They may be talking about a particular plan or program. So I try to make notes, to take notes, to then study later on and to be able to contribute. Right now, I cannot participate that much because of my lack of knowledge. I'm trying to solve that because precisely from April 7th, then I will be completely available. When I started this about being an Indigenous leader, I have learned a lot and I've taken on new challenges. I am an economist engineer, which does not help me help my peoples. I don't feel that I can help with that. We all know that we have to work and we also have to make time to help others. So in terms of participating in Chirapa and all of that, I have tried to do what I really want to do. And that is the challenge that I'm going for right now, to prepare myself so that I can help. Perhaps it's a different career with a different direction. And since January up until March, I have been super busy, but I've always tried to do this. On Wednesdays, I pay attention to class for the 3 hours because it's at night. And at night, I am free, I'm available, and I can follow. But in the mornings, it's very complicated because I'm doing two things at the same time. For example, right now, an hour and a half ago, that's when I finished my class. But I'm doing two things at the same time. And then at 11, I have to go. But I am trying to do the best I can. So that is a personal issue. The only thing I'm trying to do is to write down as much as I can, to then read and study on my own. And the things you send to the drive, sometimes I'm reading. You also sent that document on the how to create the user to get into Fimi's page. And I have issues with that because in the guide that I received, what I've read, is that it's only how to get in to be there, but we do not know, because it's not given to us, is how to create a user name and a password. So I don't know whether perhaps I haven't read it carefully or haven't understood. So that is the only thing. Everything else, the hours that I'm completely attentive, I've participated as best as I've been able to. And as some of my sisters have said, sometimes we don't have all the concepts clear enough. And sometimes we need to know what something is, what's for, and how it helps us. So we need to have a clearer concept to be able to understand more about the subject. If we don't know that, we are learning, but then not enough. We would have to have a different session to see what's missing. How can we go deeper in the subject? But nevertheless, I have learned a lot, and I have seen that there are a lot of programs and projects that can help even finance collaborations and participation so that other voices are heard in other places. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany. And thank you everyone for sharing your experiences. It's really helpful also for everyone to hear what another person is experiencing, so that you know that you're not alone in some of the feelings that you have. But I first of all would like to request you to please give yourselves grace when you're going through this process, because it's impossible to know about an entire process in just 1.5 hours or in 3 hours. It's impossible. I mean, some people have been in a process for 10, 20 years and they're still learning about it. I mean, if you talk to anyone who's following some of these processes, sometimes they have no idea what, like, the things that they don't know about in that process. And so please give yourselves grace. It's no one is expecting that you will learn everything in the 1.5 hours or in the 3 hours that you're in the class. No one expects that. Think of this as a highlight. It's just highlighting processes that Indigenous peoples are engaging with or can engage with, and then you yourself can decide which processes you want to follow up with. Also, why you have the link to the reading materials, so that when you have time on your downtime, with however you have divided your time during the week or over the weekend, or when you just have space, you can just refer to that folder and read some of the things that have been placed there. Again, I know it's not a must that you must ask questions during the sessions. Sometimes, like today, everyone has said, oh, what you've said is very clear, and that's okay. You can also say that. You can say, thank you so much for your presentation, it's clear. Or sometimes, and that's why we constantly also tell you that because sometimes you're overwhelmed with so much information during the session, and then later on you can go and think about it or read more about it, and then something comes to your mind. You can always write, say, we had this session with with more. So we had this session with Edna, and she talked about this process in climate change or biodiversity, and I wasn't very clear about it. Can you please ask her to clarify more on this issue that I later on read about or heard about? Sometimes when someone is speaking, you can also try to connect what they're saying with the work that you're doing. And that is how you can give an experience. Say, oh, you've mentioned this process. Do you think that, I'm working with women who are doing this. Is that a process that you think we can engage in that can enrich the work that we're doing? So it's not just about engaging at the international level, but also seeing how this information that you have affects or enriches the work that you're already doing in your own communities at the local level. So bringing the international to the community level. How do you connect the two? Or you can even sometimes ask the expert to connect it. So you say, okay, you're talking about the CEDAW and this resolution. What does that mean for a community organization or women in my community? What does that mean for us? So trying to connect some of these things to the work that you're already doing, because what we're trying to do is also enrich the work that you're doing in your own communities, in your own countries, in your own regions, for those who are working with regional organizations. So always try to connect where there is a connection. If you can see a connection, try to connect that with the work that you're currently doing, so that even when you're going back to your own jobs, people can see that there's a difference in the way you're doing things, or the information that even you're sharing back with your other colleagues, and say, well, listen, we're working on climate change. From what I see, our work is on climate change. How about we engage in the climate process? So we're engaged in the CSW, or let's engage in the biodiversity, because this is what I heard about it. So it's also about you taking back information and seeing how the information that you're getting here is able to enrich the work that you're already doing, or expand the work that you're already doing. And this is also a way for you to network, because this the guests that we have are in the movement, the Indigenous, most if not all of them are Indigenous people. So they're already in the movement, and they can offer you not just the information they're giving you now. You can also write to us and say, hey, can you please ask Dona Tarsila to connect us with
with someone who's leading the indigenous women's movement in Africa or in Asia or in in Latin America? Who do we speak to so that we can be part of that regional movement? That is the essence of having these connections that we're building here in the school. So again, I want to repeat to please give yourselves grace. I know everyone is having 103 things that is happening at the same time, and then you're still having the school, you still have families, some of you that you need to take care of. So there's a lot happening with everyone. And so even as you think about why am I not contributing more, why am I not understanding, or I'm being overwhelmed, remember to pause and just remember that this is a learning process. It never ends. We can't learn everything at the same time or on that same day. It's going to take a long time for us to be able to now grasp not just concepts, but also the terms that many of you have mentioned. Some of these terms are very new. Some of these processes are very new. And if it's something that has sparked interest in you, it's something that later on you can go, just when you're calm, you can sit and say, okay, let me read about the Convention on Biological Diversity because it has sparked some interest in me. And then you can do that slowly and see how you can engage. Please ask your academic advisors if you need to be connected to one of the experts, if you have specific questions for them, that we're here to support you in doing that, in learning mode, not just during the sessions, but also outside of the sessions. What kind of support do you want? Would you like? And then we can see how we can support you in that way, right? So we do anything that is possible or within our power, within our parameters to do. So if it's connecting you and we're able to do that, then that's something that we're going to be able to do. If it's forwarding your questions or your concerns about a certain issue to one of the people who've come, then that's also something else we can do. That's why we constantly tell you we have their contacts. Please write to us, tell us what you need, and then we can forward those to them, and they can reach out to you personally, or they can give us the response, and we can again relate back to you. So again, thank you so much for sharing that experience. I think it's important for us to have sessions like this to be able to see how we can make the experience better or be able to support you. And please let us also know how better do you want us, the academic advisors. So this is how can Joy support you better? How can I support you better? How can or they support you better in the work that you're doing in this global school? How can we support you better? Because that's why we are here. We're here to support you learn. We're supposed to help you make this experience as it might not be easy, because again, there's a lot of information, but try to make it as easy as possible for you. So please let us know. Don't suffer in silence. This is a safe space. Please let us know what's happening with you if you need any kind of support that will help this be, just a better experience for you. So again, thank you. Again, a reminder about our Wednesday class is going to be at 8 a.m. We'll keep reminding you because we know that sometimes there's already a set time for many of us with our calendar. So we'll keep reminding you. We'll remind you tomorrow, and we'll remind you again on Wednesday, especially for, so all across the board, we'll remind you so that we remember when the class is going to be. And again, I hope everyone is still working on the regional statements, because you only have maybe 1 or 2 days left before you need to have done it. So please, if you have not completed it, please make sure that you take a bit of time to input the document in the Google Docs that was shared with you, and then we can have a regional statement, and then we can now develop the global statement. So again, thank you so much, everyone. I see our time is coming up. Thank you to the interpreters and the FIMI team who are also supporting us behind the scenes. Thank you again. Have a good day for our sisters in Latin America. Have a good evening and a good night to the sisters in Asia and Africa. And I hope to see you again on Wednesday. All right. All right, then. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Take care.